Have you ever considered that energy is the industry that powers every other industry? The lower cost energy is, the lower cost everything is. By now, we're all too aware of what happens to the family budget when the cost of energy goes up. But what about the cost of energy to the natural environment? Energy comes in many forms, but the one thing all sources of energy have in common is environmental impact. There are always trade-offs between the benefits of a particular type of energy source and the costs, both financial and environmental. No exceptions. Currently, fossil fuels supply nearly 80% of global energy consumed and are used to produce more than 60% of electricity in the US and worldwide, but it comes at a cost to the environment. While fossil fuels get a bad rap today, it's important to recognize their importance in advancing human civilization. Low cost, on-demand, versatile, and reliable energy enables human beings to use modern machines to be productive and prosperous. As human civilizations have progressed over time, all advanced economies have ultimately relied on fossil fuels to prosper. With that said, we need to keep in mind there are still 2.6 billion people in the world using wood or dung for heating and cooking. While living with nature is a romantic notion in developed countries, what it usually means to the billions of people with poor or limited access to energy is degrading poverty and deprived, unfulfilled lives. Fossil fuels have been and continue to be a game changer when it comes to modern economic growth and humanity's long grind to emerge from widespread poverty. So why am I talking so much about fossil fuels? Well, unless you've been living on a different planet, clean energy policies in advanced economies like the United States are calling for a rapid reduction and even elimination of fossil fuels as a source of energy. And as we all know, it's the greenhouse gas emissions from the fossil fuels, particularly carbon dioxide, that are making the headlines as the driver of potentially catastrophic climate change. In case you're wondering, I'm not a climate denier. I like to call myself a climate thinker. While it's clear carbon dioxide exerts a warming influence in the Earth's atmosphere, the question is whether increasing concentrations of CO2, whether natural or man-caused, will be catastrophic. And while it's almost never talked about, given the deep dependence humans have on fossil fuels, we should be considering the role human innovation and adaptation is certainly to play in the years to come. Not to make light of it too much, but air conditioning is a great way to mitigate the impacts of higher temperatures, just as affordable and reliable energy for heating keeps us safe from extreme cold. The fact is, human beings are using large amounts of fossil fuels today to prosper and flourish. And while advanced economies like the US have been reducing CO2 emissions for more than 15 years, primarily through fuel switching from coal to natural gas in the electricity generation sector, developing economies like those in China and India are dramatically ramping up their use of fossil fuels for electricity production in order to bring their citizens out of poverty. My advice to you is to be wary when it comes to claims that catastrophic climate change is inevitable without immediate and dramatic reductions in the use of fossil fuels. There are plenty of reasons to question these claims, and frankly, if they are certain, then what are we going to do about China and India? My encouragement is to do your own research and look for sources of information other than media headlines, activist groups, and speeches by politicians. The truth is that all sources of energy have environmental impacts, and we should insist on a full life cycle consideration of all technologies. I submit that a myopic focus on carbon dioxide reduction and the idea that only the negative side effects of fossil fuels should be considered is intellectually dishonest and potentially dangerous when you consider the impact energy poverty is already having on people and how further restrictions on energy could undermine the prosperity and quality of life in advanced economies like ours. For perspective, it's important to know that electricity represents 15% of global and 37% of US energy consumption. It powers the screens we constantly look at, including the one you're watching now. And while we don't give it much thought, every electron that makes our lives better was moved into action by an electron from a power generation plant, usually located somewhere unknown to us. You know the old saying, out of sight, out of mind. When you think about it, electricity is not just any commodity. It's a service that impacts virtually every aspect of our lives, and one that we often take for granted. It keeps our food cold and heats it up. It keeps our homes at just the right temperature and powers an endless number of appliances and devices that make our lives easier and more enjoyable. I think you will agree, electricity is foundational to the health, safety, and well-being of those fortunate enough to have access to it. In fact, since the Industrial Revolution began and power grids have become common, average life expectancy worldwide has increased from about 30 years in 1900 to more than 75 years in developed countries today. But did you know there are 3 billion people on our planet who use almost no energy, including electricity, and that almost 800 million people have no access to electricity at all. It is clear lack of affordable and reliable electricity keeps people impoverished as they are not able to access life-enhancing services including quality health care, education, adequate nutrition, and protection from weather that we take for granted and have come to expect. My point in bringing this up is to be sure we keep a truly global perspective in mind as we consider clean energy policies and how the promotion of certain types of generating technologies may work in an advanced economy like the United States, but may be wholly inadequate in countries where citizens just want affordable and dependable access to light bulbs. We're going to dive deeper and explore life cycle considerations of 6 electrical generation technologies representing those most commonly being developed or operated at large scale. These include wind, solar, hydro, natural gas, coal, and nuclear. These considerations will include grid-scale operations and how each generating technology contributes to reliable operations of power grids. What are the raw materials needed as well as manufacturing requirements for each technology? And then what does construction look like, and what are the land use impacts when developing large-scale electricity generation? And finally, what is required when technologies reach their end of life and need to be decommissioned and components recycled or disposed of? I'm standing here with Columbia Generating Station nuclear plant as a backdrop for a reason. Nuclear power is what we refer to as energy-dense technology. Put another way, nuclear power can generate large amounts of electrical energy on a relatively small footprint. And when you consider the plant usually runs 24 hours per day, 365 days a year, stopping only once every 2 years to refresh the fuel, it really is a remarkable technology. Columbia is currently licensed to operate through 2043, at which point it will be 60 years old with the possibility of extending its license another 20 years through 2063. At the risk of biasing your thinking, is it possible advanced nuclear power technologies could be the common ground we're all looking for in the politically divided world of clean energy policies? Always on, dependable, and carbon-free electrical energy on a very small footprint is a hard combination to beat. But I'll let you decide. I am empowered.